Hi guys, today I want to share with you a solution of creating drop-down filters for tables using HTML and JavaScript. It's fairly straightforward. So if I filter with engineering, it gives me just one row. I can remove it, but this filter is still active. So yeah, let's get straight into it. We start off with just the basic HTML structure. This is how it looks. We just have the table and the content of it. These are the two outer wrappers. These are just for CSS. Doesn't have anything to do with the filtering. So I have my table ID emp table. It has 5 columns: ID, genders, department, status, and office. And then I have the rows. Right. We have the blank filter.js file. So we'll be starting here from scratch. To give you an overview, what we want to achieve is once we have the table, we want to add the select tag to the columns that we want to filter, and then we want to add values to that drop down filter based on the unique values of that column. So if I want to add a filter to the second column here, it should just have M and F values that should be selectable. Same for department, status, and office. And once we select any of those values, it should just show the rows that satisfy that particular filter. Now if we go back to the base HTML, I want to filter the last 4 columns. So excluding employee ID, I want all the other 4 columns to have a filter. I can come here and add a select tag, and inside I can give an option value of all for now. This would be our default selection, and I can give this class table filter. Right. So that way we can select all the filters of a table together later in our JavaScript. I can copy this and apply to the remaining 4 columns. Now in order to compare the row value with the filter value that we'll be selecting, we need some way to access the TD elements of our HTML, these values. And the way we can do that is using a query selector nth child solution. So let me write document.query selector, and here we can trace the TD element that we want to access, which is and the second column in the first row, the second TD element inside the first TR element. We get inner HTML, and then we can put this inside a console log. Now if I save it, you can see it has given me M. So that means we are able to access this TD element. Now we need some sort of solution to compare this value row by row for all the rows for the value that we'll be selecting. And then if the value matches, then we decide to display this row. If not, then we can hide this row. Because we need the column numbers, it's a good idea to assign column number attribute to our column headers, the th tags. So let me add column index as 1, and I can do the same for the rest of them as well. Now we have some unique identifier to access all the columns. Now we need to figure out a way to get the unique values for the columns. Oh, sorry, my bad. This should be option tag. We want to add option tags to the select filter based on the unique values. To get the unique values for the columns that have the filter in them, we can have a dictionary that would have column index as the key, and then the value could be an array. So we will have something like 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this array would contain the unique values for that column. So for 2 it would be M and F. For 3 it would be R&D, engineering, design, and so on. That way we can update the select tag and update the option values using the array for the corresponding columns only. To get started, let's create a function in JavaScript. Get unique values from column. This will not take any parameter. And inside we can define an empty dictionary for now. And we can define it as a dictionary. Cool. Now we'll select all the columns that have a filter in them. So we write document query selector all, and inside we can pass the class name table filter. And save it in, let's say, all filters variable. Now that we have all the filter elements, we need to get which column numbers are assigned to the select tag. Basically, which columns we have defined to be filterable in our HTML, which is 2 to 5. To do that, we can write all filters dot for each let's write filter I, and inside we can get column index equal to filter I dot parent element dot inner HTML alert. Let me explain what I'm doing. So the column index, the variable that we have, sorry, the attribute that we have is in the parent element of the select filter. Table filter is what we have selected here. Query selector all table filter. The parent element of this select tag is the th tag, which has the attribute column index. So we need to pull the column index attribute from the parent element. Let's see what this gives us. In order to execute this function, we need to add it to our HTML. We can add it at the bottom of the page after the table has been loaded. So yes, we can add it here. Nothing happens. Okay. I think we need to, okay, yes, this has to be in bracket, and I think this, Okay, let's see now. Great. So now we are able to access the parent elements in our HTML. So this gives us the column index of the columns that have the table filter. If I refresh, it gives me 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we need to parse the rows and get the unique values of the column. To do that, let's define a const variable called rows and map it to our table rows. And then we parse the rows one by one. Nth child, the way we did earlier. And here we will need to insert the column index variable. There we go. Now we're able to pull all the TD elements. And if we do inner HTML, we get all the TD values. Now we have to add the unique values of the TD tag of the rows in an array and map it to the column index and put it in a dictionary. Let's save this value in a variable. There are two things that we need to check. First is if the column index is already present in the dictionary, and second is if the cell value is already present in the array. For the first one, we can write if let's say the column index is not there. In that case, we need to add the key in the dictionary. We can write this creates a new array and puts it as a value for the key of column index in the dictionary. In case the column is already present as a key, we need to check the second condition, which is if the value is present in the array. In this case, the array already has the cell value, so we can write and if it's not, we want to append the array right. Let's add another loop so that we can see all the unique values for the filterable columns at the end. It says M is present. Now it's parsing all the TD values for the filterable columns. Column index 2 has unique values as MNF, R&D engineering design support, online side 1 to 3. And that's absolutely correct. Right. Now we create a function to update the select tags. Let's create a function called update select options. Now we update the inner HTML for the select tag. So we can write to explain what's happening here is first we get all the filters using the class table filter, which is common for all the select tags. Then we loop over all the filters. Filter I is the instance, the looping variable, and we get the parent element, again the column index, using the same logic as before. Now that we have the column index, we fetch the unique values from the dictionary using the dictionary and column index. This returns an array that has all the unique values for that particular column depending on the column index. Then we loop over the unique values for I, and we update the filter inner HTML, which is the select tag. We update the existing HTML and we add on the option values. Option value equals to I, and it would also display I in the drop down options. Let's remove the alerts that we had added before. We also need to call this function after getting the unique values. So we can pass the call here and pass the unique value dictionary like so. Let's see if it's working now. Unique values are obtained. Alright, so my select tag now has the unique values from the column. Now the next part is to create the filter rows function. We can have a dictionary like filter value dict, which would have the column index, which is 2, and then the option value selected. And 3 value, 4 value, 5 value. So it would have the option select that the user selects against the column, unless it is all. So we don't actually want to save all, so that means it's only 2, 4 and 5 the filter that is active. Third is all, which is default, so we won't be storing this. So let's start. So here we are first getting all the table filters as we did before, getting the column index of all the filters, and then checking the value, and if the value is not all, that means the filter is activated. We store the value of the selected option against the column index. Now we need to compare the row values against the selected filter value. That means we need to compare M against the selected one, engineering, or the row values in column 3 against the selected filter value, and do that comparison. For that, we can have another dictionary which would get us only the values for the columns that have the filter. So we need the values from second, third, fourth, and fifth for all the rows one by one. The way we can do that is looping over the filter value dict. Now we have the filter value for column I, and we have the corresponding row value for this row that we are iterating over, and for this column I. Now comparing these two, if the filter value doesn't match with the row value, and if the filter is not all, that is default, that means this row doesn't satisfy the filter condition, and we can update the display row flag as false and break out of the row. No need to check the remaining columns for this particular row. We can add another condition for the display flag. Alright, let's see if it's working. We get the unique values for the columns, update the unique values in the drop-down select tag, and there we go, it's filtering. Let's see if the second filter works. Yes, it does. And if we remove it, it shows everything. R&D, okay. On leave should show just one, and now if we remove R&D, it shows all male employees that are on leave. If we remove this, it shows all employees regardless of gender that are on leave, and this takes us back to the default table. To review what we did, we first populated the table in the normal th and td tags, and we decided which columns we want to filter, and we added the select tag there with just one option value for all, and we made sure that the class attribute for all the filters was same, which is table filter. Then we worked out a logic to get all the unique values for the columns that have this table filter, and because we need nth child in order to get to the specific th and td elements, we decided to give column index attribute to all the th tags. Then we got the unique values in a dictionary, which is in the format of column index, and the value is an array that contains all the unique values. We first checked if the cell or rather the column index is already present in the unique dictionary or not. If it is present, then we go on to check the second condition, which checks if the td value, the cell value, is already present in the dictionary. If it is, we do nothing. If it's not, then we add to the dictionary. We push the cell value into the dictionary. And if the column index is not present in the dictionary at all, we add that key and we add the first cell value as a single element array against this key value. Then we update the select drop-down tags which we had added to our HTML with just one option of all. We then update that particular tag with all the unique values that we have just received in our dictionary, like this. We then work out a logic to filter the rows depending on the value selected in the table filter. We get all the values, all the active values of the filters, store it in the filter value dictionary against the column index, and then we create a column cell value dictionary to get all the column values for the rows that we'll be looping over one by one. We save all the rows from the document in this rows constant, and then we loop over the rows constant with the variable row. We check the td tags for every row and compare it with the corresponding selected filter value. If the filter value doesn't match and it returns -1 and the filter value isn't all, then we set the display flag as false and we break out of the loop. We don't check the remaining columns for the row, and depending on what the flag is, we set the display as table row, or we decide to hide it as display none. So yeah, that's it. I know there are a lot of ways to achieve this. Let me know if you have any doubts and I'll try my best to answer them in the comments. And hopefully this was useful to you. If it was, like the video, consider subscribing, and let me know what you guys would like to see next. Thanks.